The first creature ever to be cursed after God made the world was the serpent. And also, if you look at Shakespeare's grave at in Stratford-upon-Avon, cursed be he that moves my bones. So it's effectively saying keep away, because if you don't keep away, something bad will happen. And the apotropaic magic as well. You know, you're putting effectively a spell on something, but you're doing it to protect that thing or to bring good luck. Really, curses and charms are just split sides of the same coin. And as I said, I think a curse can sometimes bring benefits. Right, thanks a lot, Christian. Thanks for the intro. I did a little intro for myself. It surprises me how much I obviously plagiarise my own things. So yeah, I have been a very keen amateur folklorist for the best part of 40 years. When I was thinking about what to talk about, I thought, I'll talk about curses. They're incredible things. They've been around for a very, very, very long time. And the folklore around curses doesn't provide any evidence for or disprove their efficacy, but what it does is it gives a real insight into the culture of the believers. So I'm going to sort of skip through the history of cursing since literally the year dot, since the beginning of, well, you'll see when we get there, up to the present day cursing trending on TikTok, which is told through the folklore and folk tales of the times. So we're going to go through many thousands of years here very, very quickly. I'm also going to give you my take on why I think cursing happens, and in some ways why cursing's a good thing. So there's going to be a bit of a gallop through various folk tales showing how people used curses and how they perceived curses in that particular period in different cultures and across the historical periods, and then some other stuff as well. So let's start with actually what is a curse. So I had a look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which gave me 6 definitions. So I've gone for the original definition for the purpose of this talk. Curse is from the Old English, meaning to wish evil upon. So what can we use curses to wish evil upon? We could curse a person, we could curse a place, we could curse an object. I'm going to cover all of those today. First, a few of the greatest highlights in the history of cursing. So, depending on your religious belief, press the button, Paula, it works better. Depending on your religious belief, is the first curse ever. And on the basis that you shouldn't punch down, it's really mean that an animal was cursed. This was a particularly devious and nasty animal. So the very first curse ever may have been that cast on the serpent in the Garden of Eden. After Adam eats the fruit of the tree of knowledge, in the book of Genesis, the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shall thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So the first creature ever to be cursed after God made the world was the serpent. Leaping forward now to the Romans. The Romans did like a good curse. They were very fond of curses and tended to use them to exact vengeance upon people they didn't like or things that had gone wrong. So if they had somebody who'd slighted them and they were not happy about it, they would often write on a small lead tablet or difficciones. Please forgive me, there will be stuff in other languages. I cannot pronounce any of it, so I apologise in advance. And these were then rolled up and usually shoved into cracks in walls and things. They've got a fair number on British Roman sites, particularly around the Temple of Aquasulis in Bath. But the one found in Gloucestershire, which is now in the collection of the British Museum, I think is a very typical one. And to me, or to maybe to my modern eyes, it's taking it a bit far, but this is pretty much what they're all like. The page which is given to Mercury, so the tablet, that he exact vengeance for the gloves which had been lost, that he take blood and health from the person who had stolen them to the person who has taken the said gloves, it be evident as quickly as possible what we are asking the god Mercury. Now, unfortunately, that bit fell off, so we don't know exactly what they were asking Mercury, but it sounds a bit out of proportion to me for just somebody nicking a pair of your mitts, but there you go. It became very obvious during this talk that human beings, for many, many thousands of years, like smacking stuff and like calling down the vengeance of the god on people, quite often at both at the same time. Which brings me to one of my favourite historical cultures, Vikings. I love the Vikings. I think they're probably overly demonised, but I'm quite prepared to be convinced otherwise. And basically, they're repellent in many ways. If you ask the Lindisfarne monks, they certainly tell you that, if they were still here. And they had a great line in cursing, often employing professionals to do it. So you could pay a skald, a bard, to draft something appropriate for you. Again, please excuse the pronunciation. This is Björken for Runestone, which is in Blekinge in Sweden, and it bears the following inscription. Now, there has been some controversy, not controversy, what's the word? Differences.
When Zia Yusuf gave that speech.
Sorry, thank you. Differences of opinion about what it means, but this is likely. Master of the runes, conceal here runes of power. Incessantly plagued by maleficence and doomed to insidious death is he who breaks this monument. So yes, it's a curse, but it's also a form of protection. This is a monument to my ancestors. If you mess with this, the wrath of the gods will be upon you. Now, many of you will be familiar with this curse since primary school. This is Sleeping Beauty. The tale of Sleeping Beauty is first recorded as a folk tale Persephorce, which may originate as early as the 1340s, and it's quite different. But what you find when you're looking at folk tales and folk stories, particularly where there's quite common themes like curses, is you'll see stories change and evolve and names change, and nothing is static. So as you already know, this is about what happens if you don't get the guest list right for a party. In order for the curse to come true, the fairy who has cast it, because she was not invited to the princess's christening, manipulates events in the palace to an extraordinary degree. She makes sure that even when all of the king and queen have cleared out all the spinning wheels from the palace, that there's a little old lady up in an attic somewhere with one that somebody's forgotten about, and that the princess happens to find it on her birthday and prick her finger in order to fall asleep for 100 years. So this is a curse that doesn't just manipulate the princess, but it kind of manipulates everything. And things don't get any better, quite honestly. She spends 100 years asleep. Then in the early versions of this story, she's awoken by labour pains, not by a kiss from the prince. Prince Charming, unfortunately, has already found her and will draw a veil over the next bit. Basically, he investigates this deserted palace, finds Sleeping Beauty, and 9 months later she wakes up with labour pains. The prince returns and marries her, so yeah, that's all right then. But it's unsurprising that the Brothers Grimm, when they wrote this story down, softened that. So the prince breaks the curse by kissing Sleeping Beauty, which is much nicer, particularly if it's the Ladybird Easy Reading version. So curses are a really useful plot device in fairy tales and folk tales. Beauty stole a rose from the beast's garden, but love conquered all, and she broke the curse upon him, so he turned back into a handsome prince. But the next story I'm going to tell is one of a lesser-known fairy tale, another Grimm's fairy tale, called The Six Swans. This has one, possibly two curses. It has a wicked stepmother, and it has a wicked witch. And also the wicked witch is a wicked stepmother, and the wicked witch, the other wicked witch, is a wicked mother. So there's a lot of wicked going on here. So this is the story. In the Six Swans, a king has six sons and a daughter. His wife has died, and the family are very close. One day he's out hunting in the forest and gets lost. And a witch comes and says, I will show you the way, but in return, you must marry my daughter. So the king decides to go with this and say, okay, I will do that. But before the wedding, he sends his children away because he doesn't trust their new stepmother one little bit, and that turns out to be correct. The stepmother can't work out why he keeps going missing, but one day follows him, finds out that he has 7 children, and curses the boys. Each of the princes is turned into a swan. Somehow the young woman escapes, but to break the curse, she has to make a vow to stay silent for 6 years. During those 6 years, she spends the whole time weaving and sewing a shirt for each of her brothers, made from fabric woven by starflowers. Now, despite this vow of silence, a lot of stuff goes on. She gets married in the 6 years, and she has 3 children, all of whom disappear mysteriously. This is because her mother-in-law, the king she's married to, different king, his mother is very jealous of her and keeps stealing her babies. As the 6 years is up, the princess is actually under threat of execution for infanticide, which of course is a false accusation. Her mother-in-law is trying to get rid of her. Just as the executioner is about to light the fire, 6 swans swoop in and prevent her being burnt at the stake. Children, she throws the shirts over the swans, and they immediately turn back into her brothers. The spell is broken, the story is told, and the mother-in-law is burnt at the stake instead. They're very violent very quickly. The king and queen live many years with their 6 brothers in peace and joy, the Brothers Grimm tell us, once they've incinerated her mother-in-law, except she hasn't quite finished the 6th shirt, so one brother has to go through life with 1 wing instead of an arm for the rest of his life. Now, this teaches us a few things. First of all, cursing is bad. Secondly, that your sins will find you out and it will come back on you big time. And thirdly, that princesses are always humble, beautiful and gentle in folk tales until you cross one, then they get proper vindictive. And this is what happens with the tale of Siegfried, and again, excuse pronunciation, Kriemhild, whose love and subsequent marriage end in tragedy in the German epic. I'm not even going to try that. It's the saga of Siegfried. I'll just tie myself in knots otherwise. So here she is. Isn't she beautiful? This is the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. When she was born, she was given the name Kriemhild, which means, roughly translated, one with the bearing of grief. Now, if anybody ever had a cursed life, it's her. It really is. As a teenager, she had a dream of birds being killed, and she went to her mother, who we haven't been told is a witch, but definitely has some psychic gifts. And her mother said, that is a prophecy that you will lead to the deaths of many of your family, and that will happen because of your marriage. She said, Mother, I will never marry. I don't ever want that to happen. And that is my solemn vow. Now, breaking a solemn vow is a bad thing, particularly in folk tales, but when she meets the knight Siegfried, who is, we're getting pretty Jilly Cooper here, is amazingly handsome and massively brave, and he has the strength of 12 men, and skin impervious to weapons due to being smeared in dragon blood during a battle. She abandons her vow and agrees to marry him. Unfortunately, her uncle finds out what his Achilles heel is, which is actually not an Achilles heel, but a spot on the back of his shoulder. One well-aimed lance later, exit our hero. So our winsome heroine here, absolutely beautiful, such a kind, sweet girl, until this happens, and she gets vengeful big time. Her family marry her off to Attila the Hun fame, and she goes off to live in his kingdom. And part of this is they are very scared of her. So, like, marry her off, get her away. She then gets Attila to invite her brothers, among other knights, over to her house, or to the kingdom rather, and to revenge the death of Siegfried, she either kills them herself or gets other people to kill them for her. So she has suddenly stopped being this beautiful, humble, sweet little princess. Of course, when she kills the knights, somebody takes umbrage and beheads her. So in one version of the tale, she has an early death. In another version of the tale, she goes back to what's left of her family and lives out her life in peace. But that is just the best example of a cursed life. It seems like she can't do anything without it going hideously wrong. Big time jump. Through now to the early 20th century, and a wave of the Egyptomania that hit Europe during that period. It was around about the time of Tutankhamun's findings, for example. And this is the famous cursed mummy, or the mummy case. It's actually the lid of a mummy case that is in the British Museum. And it's got many stories attached to it, most of which are nonsense, to be quite honest. It's only in the lid, and there is a tale that it was taken to the British Museum, but for some reason ended up in the hold of the Titanic and was responsible for the Titanic sinking. This is not true. However, it is likely that the sensational journalist W.T. Stead, who died upon the Titanic, did originate some of the stories about this being very unlucky, and it might be that the two things kind of got conflated. But it is definitely said to have a curse attached to it. We don't know whether the curse, if it exists, and the mummy is connected to the supposed ghost of an Egyptian woman that haunts the now long closed British Museum tube station. If you think that, I'll leave it with you to decide if you think there's a connection there. There's also a tale that the famous Egyptologist E. Wallace Budge said that this mummy case was responsible for the start of the First World War. Now, what the reckoning is behind that, I've got no idea, and I think that is probably also anecdotal. A group of London occultists, including Florence Farr of the Order of the Golden Dawn, once held a séance in the British Museum and claimed that a jelly-like face emerged from the case. On that occasion, W.T. Stead was one of the other sitters. Also, curses are attached to other Egyptian objects in London. The obelisk known as Cleopatra's Needle on the north bank of the Thames has been said to be cursed. It's been associated with strange whispering noises, which could be oral hallucinations, possibly, and a number of suicides. So there's a few examples of cursing's greatest hits. You can see now why there are a variety of things that can be curses and a number of reasons why cursing takes place. So I've grouped them as revenge, such as the Sleeping Beauty, you didn't invite me to your party, or the Roman curse, you stole my stuff. Jealousy, the Six Swans, and Snow White as well, where there's a jealous person, often the wicked stepmother. Again, if you go back earlier with the stories, it's often a wicked mother. And the stepmother again softens it in later tellings. Punishment and hubris, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, I cursed you because you've done something wrong. Protection, such as the runestone I showed you. And also, if you look at Shakespeare's grave at in Stratford-upon-Avon, cursed be he that moves my bones. So it's effectively saying keep away, because if you don't keep away, something bad will happen. And in the case of the unlucky mummy here, quite honestly, it's just too weird to tell. We don't know where the story came from. It was probably brought along with this massive wave of interest in Egypt. I'm not going to talk about the Tutankhamun curse today. It's too much to talk about, and it's very contentious. But that's probably the most famous from this kind of wave of Egyptian fanaticism, if you like, that came with the archaeology in the early 20th and late 19th centuries. Curses on people. This is Pendle in Lancashire. Yes, I'm going to talk about them. So one piece of evidence in the trial of the Pendle witches was around a curse. And it was actually quite an early piece of evidence. 11-year-old Alison Davis met a peddler while she was walking in Pendle Forest. She had no money with her, but she wanted some pins. So she was trying to get him to give her some pins free of charge. He said no. You need to give me a penny or two, I will give you pins. If you don't give me money, I will not give you pins. So she cursed him, and he immediately collapsed, complaining of a pain in his side. When the man was found, the matter was inquired into, and Alison said, yeah, I cursed him. Yeah, definitely did it. Those people who've examined it through the eyes of modern medicine have been inclined to think that the peddler suffered a stroke. Now, she may have been indirectly responsible, because if she frightened him and made him panic, that could have led to him being taken ill. If we think about things like voodoo, for example, where it's basically people believing in things, then they kind of happen in the way that they believe. It's all culturally appropriate. But curses on people tend to work in two ways. Either the cursed individual knows they've been cursed, and because they believe in curses, they act in a certain way, or the curse gives them something to attribute ill luck, illness, whatever to. So if you're in a situation where you've got a run of bad circumstances, you might say, well, it's because my family is cursed, or it's because somebody's cast a curse on me. I need to find out who it is. Curses run in families are often set to happen into the 7th or even the 9th generation. And that's what happens with this snake murdering story from the northeast of England. So the tale of the lambton worm starts weird and gets weirder, and it leads to a curse that lasts for 300 years. One version of the tale is that at some unspecified time in the Middle Ages, John, the son of the Lord of the Manor of Lambton, a village in northeast England, caught a strange worm-like creature in the castle moat. It was an ugly creature. He was quite a small boy at the time, and he said that he catched the devil. Rather than throw it back, for some unknown reason, I have no idea why, he put it into the castle well, obviously not considering the fact that that's where people got their drinking water. John grew up and became a knight, went away to fight in the Crusades, but things happened while he was away. According to a local ballad, the worm got fat and grad an awful size, with great big teeth and great big mouth and great big goggly eyes. And when all neats he crawled out to pick up bits of news, he felt dry upon the road, he milked a dozen coos. The fearful worm would often feed on calves and lambs and sheep, and swally little persons alive when they laid down to sleep. This was not an ideal situation. Somehow word got to John that the worm had grown to an immense size, was a complete menace, and John vowed to return in haste to dispatch it. So far, so good. He'd grown good at fighting, he wasn't anticipating any trouble, but he realised once he got back that it wasn't like a big overgrown newt that could be sliced up, there was an issue. The worm had an uncanny ability to quickly heal any damage done. So as he chopped it up, it just put itself back together again. And after a few attempts, he gave up and went to seek the advice of a local wise woman. Right. This is do not annoy a witch. So she recommended that he wear a special suit of armour studded around with spear blades and that he engage the creature in battle in running water. So what happens is he manages to persuade, because although it's vicious, it's not very bright, the dragon, the worm, into running water. And as it tries to wrap itself around and constrict him to death, the spear blades cut it up, and the running water takes the pieces away too quickly for them to join up again. So he wins. Then it comes to pay back. Excuse me a minute. So he said to the witch, "That's great, what do you want?" She said, "Give me the first thing that greets you when you get home." This is a trope you'll find in a number of folk tales, by the way. So the knight, Sir John, thought, yeah, no problem. The first thing that greets me when I get home is always my dog. So she didn't have my dog. I mean, it's a nice dog, but, it's a dog. Unfortunately, the faithful hound was otherwise occupied that day, and his father, Lord Lambton, trotted across the lawn to congratulate Sir John on his mighty victory. Unwilling to hand his father over to the witch, the knight broke his vow, and she cursed the family, not just him, to the 9th generation. So it was that for almost 300 years, no Lord Lambton would die peacefully in his bed. Curses on places. Oh, there's the Lambton worm. Sorry, missed that one. And you can see the spear blades there. Curses on places. Ali Pally. So Alexandra Palace and the Crystal Palace were built round about the same time, but Alexandra Palace never quite caught the imagination or the footfall that the Crystal Palace did. So it was the Palace and Park were built as a park, cricket ground and recreation space for North Londoners. The palace had a number of theatres and concert halls, in addition to a big main hall for exhibitions and a race course that offered flat racing during the season. It opened in 1873, but had a checkered history. By 1875, it had to be rebuilt following a devastating fire, only 16 days after it opened, and it never really caught on. This is said to be because a group of travellers were staying in the area and were forced to move from the site when building commenced. They left a curse behind. May death and destruction befall this place and everything associated with it. It's still there, but again, it's taken a long time for that one to wear off. So these are some of our more modern curses. And also a piece of apotropaic magic, which I'll explain in a minute. So in 1892, a lead tablet was found in a cupboard at Wilton Place, which is a house near Dimmock in Gloucestershire. The tablet was headed with the nonsense words, "Silly Harass," below which were a selection of astrological symbols and the following curse. Asmodeus, Actius, Magalesius, Ormenius, Laius, Nikon, Minon, Zeppa, make this person to banish away from this place and country. Amen. To my desire. Amen. In this case, we don't know if this person knew they were cursed. We don't know what the outcome of the curse was, but hiding things up chimneys so that they were kind of there but not there, nobody knew they were there, was not uncommon in the Middle Ages and early modern period. And it's likely to be a form of apotropaic or protective magic. For example, a desiccated cat chimney may protect a house from mice. So concealing things in chimneys, attics, inside walls, under floorboards allows the curse or charm to be cast without advertising it to the neighbours. In the late 19th century, workmen buried a horse's head in the foundations of the new Methodist Church in Littleport, Cambridgeshire, and poured a good portion of beer in after it. Now, as Methodists are much opposed to strong drink, I know, I was brought up as one can infer that this activity was not connected with the church itself. So it's one of the workmen said it was there to drive the evil and witchcraft way and suggested that the practice predated Christianity in the area. This is likely based on the date, be St John's Methodist Church, which is shown on this slide. A more modern story now from Combe Moss in Cheshire, another curse. So in the 19th century again, specialist labourers known as navigators or navvies were engaged in building canals and railways in Great Britain. A number of these navvies were laying a track between Manchester and Buxton in Derbyshire and found time for mischief. So they were taking a break near Combe Moss, and a few of them decided to break into a farmhouse while the owners were away to see if they could find some food. They broke in, they helped themselves from the larder. They were hoping to find beer, but what they found was a human skull in pride of place on the kitchen mantelpiece. So for devilment, they took that as well. They were to regret it. From that moment on, nothing went right with the construction. Many of the navvies fell ill, and the project was further delayed by numerous landslides. In addition, parts of the track laid one day were mysteriously taken up overnight. The story quickly got about that these problems with the works were the result of a curse arising from the abstraction of the aforementioned cranial appendage. The remains were returned to their usual resting place, and their spectral formal owner granted free railway travel in perpetuity just to be on the safe side. First objects: Busby's stoop, Busby's chair, 1702. So the Yorkshireman Thomas Busby cursed the chair he sat in before his execution in 1702 on grounds of murdering his father-in-law. The two men have been involved in some pretty dodgy business together, including counterfeiting coins, and argued, leading to a fight and the murder. Busby's chair, known as Busby's stoop or dead man's chair, was kept for many years at Busby's Stoop pub at Sandhatton near Thirsk. Now, the pub was next to the village gibbet where Busby was hanged and was subsequently renamed after the cursed artifact. Some say that Busby owned the pub at the time of his death and was sitting in the chair when he was taken into charge for murder, and that his ghost still haunts the building. Canadian airmen who were stationed nearby during World War II laughed at the cursed story and sat in the chair, never returned from bombing raids over occupied Europe during World War II. Others who sat in the chair experienced misfortunes such as accidents or illness shortly afterwards. In 1978, the chair was donated to Thirsk Museum, where it was hung from the ceiling so it could be exhibited without anybody sitting in it. The pub is now not a pub anymore, it's had a change of use, and it's now an Indian restaurant. You'll know this next one. You will know this next one. This is the Crying Boy. Again, I'm not going to go into an awful lot of detail, but I like it because it is just so, it was just such a media frenzy. So this is a really well-known story about a number of different paintings of crying children, usually boys, all depicting crying children and fashionable in houses in the 1970s. I remember my aunt taking down another one of the really kitschy 70s pictures to put this up. A firefighter, Peter Hall, in the north of England, was quoted in the UK press as saying that many fire brigades who've attended house fires since these paintings became popular found the picture undamaged, even if the house had been really severely damaged. The Sun newspaper made a big deal of this. It was like their big story. They asked people to send in their paintings so they could destroy them safely. Got a few page 3 girls to help out with that. It all got like really out of hand. If you want to know more about it, I really recommend the stuff that folklorist David Clarke has written. He's done some really good investigation on the Crying Boy and he's really the expert on this. Let's look at something a bit more expensive. This is the Hope Diamond. It's now in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. It was originally brought to Europe by the explorer Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who sold it to King Louis XIV of France in 1669. At that point, it was much bigger. It's likely that it was mined in India. It's not certain, but the composition seems to indicate that. Louis ordered the diamond to be cut and polished, and it then became known as the French blue. It disappeared during the French Revolution, and it was at that when, of course, Louis and his Queen Marie Antoinette were executed. But it resurfaced in England in the 19th century in the possession of a Mr. Thomas Hope, the Hope diamond. And it passed down through the Hope family, not terribly happily. There was sort of things going on there as well, until they sold it to Cartier in 1910. It went over to America. Rumours of a curse are likely to date from around that time, with the Washington Post publishing a list of those killed by the diamond of disaster. Have I got a slide for that? I have not. They included Tavernier himself, who apparently was torn apart by wild dogs, members of the French royal court, including the king's mistress, Madame de Montespan, and Queen Marie Antoinette. Cartier then sold it on to a rich American family, the McLeans. Evelyn McLean was obsessed with the diamond. She had a superstition that things that were unlucky for other people would be lucky for her. She wore it regularly. There's a picture of her wearing it then, and I would kill for that dress. And even attached it to the collar of her dog to bring good luck. Sadly, her belief in the good luck charm was misplaced. Her daughter died young. Her husband suffered severe mental health problems and was eventually committed to an asylum. And her son died in a motoring accident. The diamond was eventually sold after Evelyn's death to settle her debts. And it was donated to the Smithsonian in 1958. Now, since it's been in their care, all has been well, because nobody's actually worn it. Curses that go wrong. Right, I have a bit of a weakness for Celtic saints. As you probably gathered, I have a weird approach to history. I get really excited about certain bits of it. And St. Kenelm grabbed my attention for quite some time. He's great. And this is a gloriously gory tale of a curse that rebounded big time very quickly. In Clent cow pasture, under a thorn, of head bereft, lies Kenelm, king-born. So there he is. He was very young when he became king. He was heir to the kingdom of Mercia, and he was crowned and reigned from Winchcombe in Gloucestershire. But his sister Gwendryth was jealous. She wanted to rule in his stead. So she arranged to have him decapitated at Clent in Worcestershire. At that point, a dove flew out of his head and off to Rome to take news of his death to the Pope. Spring appeared on the site of his murder, which still flows behind St. Kenelm's church in the village of Kennelstowe. The young saint's body was brought back for burial to Winchcombe, which was then the capital of Mercia. Seeing it arrive, Gwendryth recited the 53rd Psalm backwards as a curse, whereupon her eyeballs burst, splattering the room with blood. So don't do that. It will catch you out. Incidentally, I have no idea why, St. Kenelm is still remembered in Kennelstowe, where on his Saint's Day, 17th of July, villagers enact the ancient folk custom of crabbing the parson. That is, finding handfuls of crab apples and throwing them at the vicar. Quite how this commemorates their patron saint remains a mystery, but it's a great story. It may have been ahead of the trend here. Turning to TikTok now, so right up to date. There's a trend for using Psalm 109 for cursing one's enemies. And a quick Google search will tell you how to do it, and it will also tell you why you shouldn't do it. I'm not going to read the whole psalm because you are nice people. I don't want to curse you, but I'm going to give you a flavour. When he shall be judged, let him be condemned, and let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few, and let another take his office. Let his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. Let his children be continually vagabonds and beg. Let them seek their bread also out of their desolate places. Let the extortioner catch all that he hath, and let the stranger spoil his labour. Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any to favour his fatherless children. Let his posterity be cut off, and in the generation following, let their name be blotted out. Let the iniquity of his fathers be remembered of the Lord, and let not the sin of his mother be blotted out. So we're getting into that again, into the next generation. And it's amazing how often these kind of things come up, because stories evolve from other stories. So don't try this at home. There's plenty of information about how to do it, but I do not claim responsibility, and neither does ASSAP. Trouble at Mill. This is a curse that kind of went wrong, and another one that rebounded immediately upon the cursor. So this is from Hodder Bridge in Lancashire, and it happened in the Industrial Revolution, 1787. There was a textile mill there, and a young lad got a bit fed up at work and decided it would be fun to drop a mouse down the back of one of the mill girl's dresses. As I would as well, and I don't blame her in the least, she had a screaming fit and cursed the practical joker to hell. Then she went into convulsions, and people thought she'd actually been cursed or possessed by demons, because these convulsions went on for 24 hours. Her body was twisted and tortured, and the convulsions spread. A number of the mill girls, 2 of the mill lads, and 2 young children, 2 young girls who were also around, were all affected. Older victims rushed to hold people still, to prevent them colliding with walls, throwing themselves to the ground, basically just to stop them getting hurt. A Dr. Sinclair was summoned from nearby Preston. He didn't think that the mouse had caused the convulsions, and it was too early in history for a diagnosis of what we'd now call mass sociogenic illness or mass hysteria. He thought that perhaps a shipment of cotton recently received from overseas had carried some kind of dangerous disease, and that the outbreak of that coincided with this girl cursing the boy. However, he was an early believer in the medical benefits of electricity. So he got out his portable electric chop machine, gave them all electric chops, and it cured the problem, no bother. A quick search on Google didn't list Hodder Bridge as ever having had a textile mill, however. So if that is correct, is it a story that's changed location in the telling, or has it been made up completely? So, to conclude, from folklore we can see that belief in curses has been around for the whole of human history. Why do people believe in them? Well, I think that people like a reason for something. Curses provide a reason why bad things happen to good people, and dispelling a curse can provide closure on the succession of bad events, or simply lead to the cursed person no longer connecting bad life events to a curse. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the sort of break a plate thing. If 2 rotten things have happened to you, and then that's 3 and it breaks the spell, it's a bit like that. So we're looking at attribution error, we're looking at selective perception of information. Also, cursed stories can have a moral dimension. The McLeans were massively rich and owned the beautiful Hope Diamond, but for all their money and their airs and graces, it did them no good. This could be a lesson for the rest of us to be careful what you wish for, so as a moral teaching. Or it could simply just be about joining the dots and putting together coincidences to form a story, which is really what many people believe the Tutankhamun case is about. The main benefit of belief in curses, I think, is if it offers both the cursor and the accursed a sense of being in control of the situation. You stole my glove, so I've set the gods on you. My cow no longer gives milk, but it's that old woman up the road's fault, and I can sort this out by denouncing her as a witch. And if she gets stuck in the pond or she gets hanged, then so much to the good, because I've never liked her anyway. So those might be some of the reasons why curses have continued to be popular and have been part of human culture and human society for as long as certainly probably before recorded history. Thank you very much for listening. That was my conclusions, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. That was a wonderful trip down the journey of curses. I mean,
interesting rabbit holes.
Absolutely. My brain was kind of like this, firing off in all kinds of different places then. You know, I'd actually like to ask you the question. I know there's some questions in the chat box, and we'll come to them very soon, and Caroline will read them out. But, you know, do you think the fear of being cursed is as powerful as the curse itself?
I'm going to change that slightly. I think if you believe in curses, you are more likely to attribute bad things happening to you. And yeah, I guess a fear of curse. It's obvious that a fear of curses work because of so many of these curses placed on things that says if you touch this rune stone, if you move this grave, something really bad will happen. So I guess that would put people, or many people, off from doing those kind of things. I guess it's that sort of you might only half believe in it, but why would you do it? You don't want to tempt fate, do you?
No, because some people always feel they're cursed with bad luck. But
Yeah.
I often find some people, they don't take the chance on opportunities. So they always feel that they've always been let down because they don't take the chances when they're presented to them. So they always think everything's bad and nothing works out for them. And we probably all know someone who feels that way, that they've always got a string of bad luck and nothing ever happens to them. I mean, do you think there's also a perpetuation that they are almost doing it to themselves?
Not quite, but what I think would be an interesting exercise would be to ask somebody who generally feels lucky and somebody who generally feels unlucky to keep a diary for a few weeks. Because I think what it is depending on your mindset, you tend to pick up certain things. So if two people on the same day both find a fiver in the street and then both fall over and break their ankle, somebody might think that, well, I broke my ankle, that's really rough, but hey, I've got a fiver. Someone else should think, well, I have this money and now this has happened, that's just my luck. So I think it's actually about how people interpret what happens to them and also about runs of bad and good luck. So, the bad things have happened to me for the last 5 years, am I cursed? And people connect up stuff but it's happened over 5 years. That's a lot of time for things to happen. I think that happens, but it's to do with how people make connections between life events. That good and bad happen to both, but some people concentrate more on the bad or the good.
No, I can see what you mean by that. Some people they make the pattern, they connect the dots, don't they? And then they attribute that as a story. Oh, and then they say, look at all these bad things that have happened. I'm such a terrible person, or I've got some bad juju or some bad karma on me. Is it from a past life? And that must also actually perpetuate a story about oneself that potentially they'll never get out of. I mean,
yeah, burning off my karma.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just before I hand over to Caroline, in regards to, say, culturally, I mean, are there, in different parts of the world, there's ethical considerations, are curses considered different in different cultures?
I think the way that you might go about it might vary. I mean, particularly if, again, perhaps going back more into history with cultures that don't have written records. So you wouldn't get an inscription on a runestone because there's no alphabet. So they might be done in other ways, perhaps through the sacrifice of an animal or something being spoken. I think curses, though, are universal. The method that will vary, but the intent, I think, is the same.
And I guess just my last thought coming out of this, swear words versus curse words. I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
Because I mean, there's plenty of swear words that we can think of, but of course there are stronger words that are curse words. You're casting an intent on someone, or you were saying to someone. So we do this perhaps almost unconsciously because certain words have stopped being curse words and they're now part of the day-to-day vocabulary.
It's just cast into yeah.
We could intentionally be casting curses on people without realizing.
I think you need the intent, though.
Yeah.
I hope so, anyway. I swear a lot.
Caroline, do you want to step back out of the green room, my love, and come and join us back for this conversation? I can see you waiting in the wings there.
Yeah. Thank you again, Paula, on behalf of ASSAP, for another incredible talk by you. Just carrying on from the conversation that the two of you are having, obviously I used to run the NRPI with the cases that came in, and also in our private area, Somerset Paranormal, we've had cases come in that's had alleged curses attached to them. And what we found is that there's always a religious belief, a strong religious belief that is behind it, and particularly from the South American types of area of the world or the Far East. This is obviously then, it's like a bit of a self-perpetuating that it's going to happen, and it seems to exacerbate the effectiveness of the curse. Have you found that yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can't say that a curse won't work on you if you don't believe in curses, but you wouldn't make that connection. And I think there is, I think, quite a lot of half belief. You know, I don't really believe it until something happens. But also, if you can perhaps, if that person feels that for some reason the curse has been dispelled, it might allow things to settle more quickly. I don't know. Yeah, I think it comes generally with a religious belief, because you need to have that setting. So, for example, they were calling upon the god Mercury, they were calling upon the Christian god to do horrible things to people they didn't like. So you have to have a belief in a higher power, whether that's God or a demon or whatever, because you are not able yourself to do this. You're asking somebody else to do it for you, or something else to do it for you.
Yeah, the difficult thing is obviously when we get cases come through from the South American Far East, because their belief system is so vastly different than ours would be here in the UK, even if it's paganism or something along those lines, or Catholicism, it just tends to make it very difficult to be able to offer any assistance or advice. But you know, we just reflect them back to a priest in their own area that can help with them along their lines, because their belief system's so vastly different. But what you're saying about not wanting to get involved with the curses, tempting fate, can you remember as kids, and maybe even horror films, watching something where you would sit and you'd look in front of the mirror and you'd have to say the name 3 times with a candle in front of your face?
What I do remember massively, and it scared the hell out of me at the time, when I was at junior school, there was a brick just by one of the corners by the gate, and like I was in the first year, so I'd be like 6, 7 or 8, something like that. And the other kids said that if you touch that brick, the devil would come out. And people would dare them to go up, and people would just kind of go up really, really slow, and they just kind of go down and run away. It was many, many years later I found out it was actually a marker for a water source for if the school ever caught fire. But honestly, it really creeped us out, particularly because obviously the older ones would do it to the younger ones, you know. And that was, I remember that. Don't go near that, the devil will come and have you.
Well, still to this day, I will never say Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, and then the third one.
And the other thing,
yeah. Yeah, so let's go on to the questions that we've got. We've got a few questions, and we've also got some comments coming in from the members that's here. So James